What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, the series where I answer your questions. Let's get started. First topic has been discussed quite a bit in the last couple weeks, and that's going to be, what's your take on balance, and do you think it should be top-down or attend to the majority? The answer is, it needs to be both. If you want to have a well-balanced game and have it be popular enough to sell copies of the game, then you need to balance around the entirety of your player base to differing degrees. The first thing, though, when you're talking about top-down, is you want to balance around people that are playing the characters correctly, because you don't want to balance around player mistakes. If someone is in bronze or silver and they're making mistakes, you don't want to balance or buff that character to reward those mistakes. You don't want to incentivize making those mistakes and bad play. That's a really bad thing to do for game design, which is why you often hear about the top-down method, because you're balancing around the players that know how to play those characters the best, the most effective, and that's where you kind of want to start. However, there are going to be these elitists that think you should only balance around the top 500 and the pro players, which is incredibly dumb from a business standpoint, and I've mentioned this before. If you want to sell video games, if your goal is to make money as a company, then the average player, needs to enjoy your game. And if you could have the game perfectly balanced for top 500 and pro players, but if the average player is constantly getting frustrated by what is essentially unbalanced for the lower and the average ranks, right? If they're getting frustrated by that, then they're not going to play your game. They're not going to buy it, they're not going to play it, and they're going to tell their friends to avoid it. So you can't just ignore the vast, 98%, 99% of your player base. You can't ignore their balance issues and just focus on pro. That would be dumb from a business standpoint. Another thing that gets suggested is, well, why don't you have top 500 make balance changes? They know what they're doing. Not really. They might know how to play the game, but balancing the game is a completely different set of skills. And on top of that, we just recently had an experimental patch that was suggested by high-ranked players, and it was one of the most hilariously awful balance patches ever made. Thankfully, it stayed in experimental for that little tournament thing and never actually saw the light of day in the live servers. The thing is, you have to understand, players don't want the game to be balanced. The majority of players don't want the game to be balanced. They want it to be as unbalanced as possible in their favor. And this behavior, this mindset, becomes more and more true the higher up in rank you go. Because the further up in rank you go, there's this mindset that some players will get where they think that they deserve to win, and therefore the game needs to be adjusted so that they win more often. The best way to balance a game like Overwatch is to start at the top and make sure that none of the characters are way too powerful, that they're must-picks, or anything like that. You also don't want any of the characters to be just complete garbage that never gets used. Now, it doesn't mean that every character needs to be useful in every single situation. You can have characters that are better on one map or another and that sort of thing. But the idea is to make it so that every character has some amount of useful effectiveness in at least half of the matches that they might be in. Then, once you have that figured out, you want to start moving down in the ranks, down to diamond, to plat, to gold, and just kind of iron out all of the other issues and make it so that this character isn't frustrating to use, or that this character isn't completely useless. But that's how you do it. You start at the top and you try to make that as balanced as possible, and then you work your way down to iron out the issues. You'll never have it perfectly balanced for both the upper and the lower bracket at the same time. It's just not going to happen. But you try to reduce the amount of problems and frustration that the average player will have. So there you go. Next up, do you think a shield that nothing can go through would work in Overwatch, although it can be destroyed? I think you're basically describing Mei's Ice Wall. Neither friendly nor enemy attacks can go through it. It stops everything, and that's it. But you can destroy it. The enemies can destroy it at least, and Mei can. She can destroy it early. Although maybe if you're considering it to be a barrier, you still want players to be able to walk through it, like Symmetra's ultimate or something like that. But what you're describing is kind of effectively Mei's Ice Wall. Something that they actually could do with May's Ice Wall is make it so that it's transparent. You can at least partially see through it instead of having it being completely vision blocking. That might be an interesting idea. I think that might be an improvement on the ability overall. But regardless, it kind of sounds like you're just describing May's Ice Wall. Next up, do you think a stationary AoE healer could work, sort of like Soldier's Biotic Field? This would be fine if it's just an ability or if it's an ultimate. If it's part of the character's healing kit, that's okay. But you don't want this to be the primary source of healing for a character. At least you don't want it to be where you just kind of drop it on the ground near the character and then that's it. And then everybody needs to come over to where you are in order to heal. You could have it so that you throw out some sort of healer, right? Like you launch a little thing, kind of like Torbjorn's ultimate, where you launch it and then it heals everything in that area for a certain period of time. You could do that, but you don't want it so that all of the other characters on your team have to constantly keep coming over to where you are in order to get healed. I don't think that's really a great idea. Next up, what if Sombra could hack a teammate and reduce the cooldown of their abilities? I don't think that this is a good idea. While it's true that Sombra needs some help, she's one of the least played characters in the game. She even has a lower pick rate than Bastion in some of the ranks, which is just funny and sad. I don't think that this is a good idea because it would be way, way too powerful when combined with certain other characters. For example, Baptiste. He would throw out the immortality field, then Sombra would immediately hack him and reduce the cooldown, and just keep doing that until the immortality field was available again. And you'd basically end up with Baptiste, who can use his immortality field 3 times as much as he can right now, which would just be ridiculous. You could also do the same thing with Mercy's res. So for a normal ability, that wouldn't be a good idea. For an ultimate, adjusting cooldowns is okay. I think if you had an ultimate that either sped up the cooldowns or cut off a certain amount of time or just reset them altogether, I think that would work fine because it's an ultimate and you only get to use it once every couple minutes or once every minute and a half or something like that. So it would be infrequent enough where it's okay. You could have it as an ultimate. But for a regular ability, no. That would just be way, way too strong. Next up, with the recent layoffs in Blizzard's esports division, is the Overwatch League on its last leg? I honestly didn't know about that, and I really don't care. I mean, sure, it sucks for the people who lost their job. I'm not trying to diminish that, but I don't like the Overwatch League. It's boring, it's uninteresting. And if I wanted to watch esports, then I would watch a real competitive game like CSGO or Dota. Don't get me wrong, I like Overwatch, it's fun to play, and I'm not trying to talk down about the game itself, but let's be honest, Overwatch is a casual game, and Blizzard tried to force it. They tried to take that square peg and cram it into the round hole of esports, and it doesn't work because of the way that Overwatch is. Like, it doesn't really work well, and on top of that, they tried to emulate all of the pro sports stuff with all the desk commentary and stuff. I know other esports do that, but Blizzard and Activision tried to take it to another level with the stadiums and this and that. It doesn't work for Overwatch. It just doesn't work. It's not interesting. I don't, I've watched a very small amount of the Overwatch League games. It's boring to me. And that's why I don't cover it on this channel, because I don't care about the Overwatch League. And the fact of the matter is, if the Overwatch League just completely went away, poof, overnight, gone, then they would have more resources to put towards making other things in the game, right? So, I don't care if it stays, but if it goes away, then maybe it'll actually be an improvement. Whatever. Next up, why is Brig great at the high ranks and bad at the low ranks? Because believe it or not, it actually requires a decent amount of skill to use the current version of Brig. You need to be really good at positioning yourself optimally so that you're able to heal your teammates while constantly refreshing that Inspire passive. You need to be landing those whip shots in order to activate that Inspire passive. And you also can't be as super aggressive as you were before. You just get taken out. Your barrier is essentially tissue paper now, and it requires a lot more positioning, and on top of that, it also requires a lot more teamwork and coordination. So you're not going to find that in the lower brackets. I mean, it's not always there in the upper bracket either, but the fact of the matter is that the things that make her work require you to have really good positioning and a good team, and if you have that, then the character can be ridiculously good. But if you don't have those things, then the character is just absolute garbage. Next up, do you think an ultimate where the caster is eliminated by using it would work? I'm guessing you would end up providing some sort of massive buff to your team or something else. But the thing is, even if the buff is ridiculously good, you're still going to be in a better position if you have that extra player. There are very, very few things that you could do that would be so unbelievably amazing to be worthwhile to making it a 6v5, right? If you have a 6v6, you would never want to deliberately make it a 6v5. So I don't think that this is a good idea. I think there are certain abilities that you could use after your player has been eliminated. I did this with one of my hero concepts where he's able to activate it after he's been eliminated, and it causes a big amount of damage, and he also revives himself. I'll put a link to that hero concept down below. It's one of my favorite all-time characters, by the way. I'll put a link to that down below if you want to check it out. But I don't think deliberately making your team at a player disadvantage is ever going to be a good idea. Next up, is there a way to earn Overwatch League coins without paying money? I just talked about the Overwatch League and how I don't care about it. But one thing is that there are some pretty awesome looking character skins that come from the Overwatch League. So if you want to get those, then sure, you can get the tokens. And finally, Blizzard has just worked with YouTube, and they've set up a new way where you can get the tokens. You can link your YouTube account into your Battle.net, and then you can get the tokens that way. If you're playing on console, you have to link your console to the Battle.net as well. Whatever. Anyways, the point is, yes, you can get them for free. I'll put a link to that down below, and it will explain how you do all of that stuff, and then you can get the free tokens just by watching the game. Or you can just, open a browser and let it run while you go and do other stuff. Just saying. Just saying. Anyways, so those are going to be all the questions for this week. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. I'm going to post a new question card over in the community tab of my YouTube channel. That link will be down below. You can go directly there, ask a question, and then maybe you'll appear in the next episode of the Overwatch Respawn. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like before you leave. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.